Glad you're up. Is Attorney General Loretta Lynch's credibility crumbling? The nation's top cop reportedly tried to squash the FBI's letter to Congress announcing that they're reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation. Why would she do that? This just months after Lynch's private meeting with Bill Clinton aboard a plane on the Phoenix tarmac that made her recuse herself from this investigation. But was she ever really recused? Joining us right now with his reaction, Republican Congressman Louis Gohmert. Congressman, what's going on between Justice and the FBI?
Well, it's pretty clear what's been going on for some time. June 27th is when the happenstance meeting on the tarmac wasn't happenstance. You can't have a happenstance meeting on a tarmac. And then immediately, July 2nd, Hillary sits down for 3.5 hours. And the very same day, according to the New York Times, friends close to Hillary Clinton say she wants Loretta Lynch to stay on as Attorney General. Well, 18 U.S.C. 599 makes clear if Hillary even indirectly indicates that she would like her to stay on as Attorney General, it's a crime.
You have a situation now where the Justice Department tried to tell James Comey before he came out with this letter, you better not do this, you really shouldn't do this, and he said, I'm doing this. How rare is that? How concerned should we be about how our government is being run?
Well, it's very clear. For a long time, the Justice Department has been used as a Democratic tool. You look back at '92, when 4 days before the election, Walsh came out and announced indictment of Bush's...
Bush 41.
That's right. H.W. Bush announced indictment, and that helped them win.
It made it seem like that Bush 41 was trying to hold up hide his role in Iran-Contra,
yeah.
But in the big picture, I got to ask you about this whole election. 78% of Republicans in states like Pennsylvania are only going to vote for Trump. 91%, it sounds like a lot, but not enough in North Carolina. Ultimately, if things keep trending this way and Donald Trump is to lose, you could say it's because Republicans didn't vote for him.
And you'd be right when you say that. This is so serious. This is not about Trump. This is about Hillary not appointing Scalia's replacement. If she does that, at least 4 out of the 10 original Bill of Rights will be gone.
But Republicans know that. Do you think this is going to change anything real quick?
Well, too many have been told by our Republican leadership, just protect yourself, run from Trump. Well, we're all going to live or die together in this election. We need to come back and make sure that Hillary doesn't win.
Right.
The crimes that have been committed need to be investigated, and it will never happen if Hillary is elected.
Right. And, Congressman, you were not originally going for Donald Trump, but you are now.
No, there's no question. You have no choice.
Louis Gohmert, thanks so much.
Great to be with y'all.
Well, it didn't take long after the news broke for Hillary to get her friends in the media to trash Director Comey over this email investigation.
And joining us right now to react is Howie Carr from the Howie Carr Show. You hear him all over the radio. Impactful talk show host around this country who also hosted a Donald Trump forum. Are you surprised about the 180 that both parties are doing on James Comey?
No, it's only to be predicted, Brian. I was amused that Paul Krugman, the New York Times columnist, within moments was describing the release of the letter as Comey-gate. Like it's Comey's problem that he's done something wrong here. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, I looked at the headlines yesterday in the Washington Post. James Comey's dangerous October surprise. James Comey fails to follow Justice Department rules yet again. James Comey needs to clean up his mess. It's just the damage Comey's bad timing it could do. I mean, what kind of bad timing? I mean, this is they said this guy was a lifelong Republican, a devout Catholic. He was the Dudley Do-Right of Washington. Now he's the worst guy in the world.
Yeah. This also reminds me, while Hillary Clinton is calling foul, how you and I are old enough to remember it was 24 years ago on the weekend before George Herbert Walker Bush versus Bill Clinton that Caspar Weinberger, his Secretary of Defense, was indicted. The indictment was later thrown out. But at that point, Bill Clinton himself seized on it and said, see, this proves the culture of corruption with the Bushes.
Right, exactly, Steve. That's the other thing here. There's Jamie Gorelick. She was the #2 person in the Justice Department under Bill Clinton. She wrote an op-ed piece, and she said in the last 60 days before an election, quote, "The balance should be struck against returning indictments." I guess only if you're, only if you're investigating a Democrat, you should lay off in the last 60 days. So there's obviously a double standard. And by the way, the statute of limitations had run out on that Casper Weinberger indictment. It was just a transparent way to get headlines for Bill Clinton when he was failing in the polls.
Yeah, editorial board back in July when all this came out, when Comey did not indict Hillary, Washington Post editorial board, they said that the Republicans are attacking Mr. Comey for doing his job. So what are they going to say now for him doing his job?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. This is like 1984. The Ministry of Truth turns on a dime, and we're all supposed to forget what they were writing a few months earlier. I mean, and Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, saying that he's violating the rules. I mean, is it a good protocol for her to be meeting with the potential person of interest husband on the tarmac in the Phoenix airport? I mean, come on, this is ridiculous.
And lastly, Howie, there's a problem. Our Justice Department might be at war with the FBI. Our FBI is mad at their leader. That's why on October 3rd, they get the 630,000 emails. They start seeing them. Later on, they inform James Comey, we got this. Comey's in a no-win situation, so to speak, because if he holds it, he's putting his hand on the scale. If he releases it, you could say he's putting his hand on the scale. But if he holds it, and in January it turns out this investigation had heated out October 3rd, he would go down in history as a man that thoroughly affected this election.
I agree. I agree. And you also got to remember this guy, the #2 guy in the FBI, McCabe. He's the one. The Wall Street Journal has been reporting on this for days. His wife was running for the state senate in Virginia, got a lot of money from Terry McAuliffe, a Clinton confidant, over $500,000, and he tried to put the kibosh on this reopening of the investigation. I mean, this is just makes Trump's right. This makes Watergate look like child's play.
4 separate FBI field offices were conducting their investigation. It just never stopped. New York is the one who led the way in this case, aided by Little Rock. Howie, thanks so much. Look forward to hearing what you have to say in your show today.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Donald Trump over the weekend comparing Hillary Clinton's investigation to other classified document cases that ended entirely differently for different people.
The young man that he mentioned, U.S. Navy sailor Christian Saucier, was sent to prison, there's his picture, for taking photos in a classified area of a submarine. You might remember we've interviewed his mom. That happened back in 2009.
Saucier's mom, Kathleen, agrees that there's a double standard for Hillary and her son, while her son sits in prison. Kathleen, this must really be tearing you up to see the double standard to such a stark degree that we're witnessing right now.
It is. It's just been devastating for our family. I mean, as you can, obviously said, my son's in prison. His wife and his daughter are without him right now. So that in itself is pretty rough. And then seeing someone else not be held to the same standard is just, it's mind-boggling to me and disgusting.
Why do you think she got off and your son didn't?
Or might be getting off, maybe, who knows?
Right. Well, the only thing I can say, again, I've said it over and over every time I've been interviewed, is there's obviously a clear double standard. Yeah. Either you're connected to the corruption that's existing right now, what we're seeing, what's being exposed more and more in our government, or you're not. And if you're an average American, you are not held to the same standard as people like Hillary Clinton and her staff.
Well, we do know that the FBI director revealed back in July that she did have classified information on her email, which is against the law. She really shouldn't have done that. What did your son do?
So when my son was 22 in 2009, he was aboard a submarine, and at that time there were no cell phone bans. He and many other submariners or young men on the sub were taking photos. Unfortunately, my son had 6 photos on his phone, which was an insecure device.
What did they show? Are these the pictures?
They showed pictures. That's a treadmill, I believe, in the picture there. They showed pictures of the engine room.
Showing the treadmill is against the rules?
Well, it's the things that are behind the treadmill that they were concerned about.
The gizmos.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, which is, again, as you can see, they've been declassified. One of the statements that Donald Trump made over the weekend was, you know, this is a 40-year-old submarine, and probably 30 years ago, if the Russians wanted that information, they would have had it.
Good point.
So whether that's the truth or not, I don't know. But what I can say is, you know, the comparison is very clear to me and so many others, is that both Hillary Clinton and my son had classified information on an insecure device. The part that changes or divides them is that my son, there's no evidence he ever transmitted them or shared them, whereas I believe an email is consistently transmitted. So an email is transmitted. So she had information on an insecure device, it was transmitted.
Yeah.
Mishandling classified information, you know, you've heard Comey and others say, well, there was no intent on the part of Hillary Clinton.
Right.
There was no intent on the part of my son as well.
Yeah, if intent matters, so...
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That's what they told your son, and that's why he's in jail.
Correct.
So what could you do to maybe bring this case up again? Or is this ever go to trial?
It never did go to trial. The week before trial, the Department of Justice and the FBI became very intimidating and threatening to my family. My son made the decision to take a plea agreement to stop what was going on for us. We'd spent everything that we had, and we went forward with that. So he accepted responsibility for having the 6 photos, which was a plea agreement. Part of the plea agreement, unfortunately, the FBI and Department of Justice required there was no appeal allowed in that plea agreement, as well as we found out that because he was sentenced to 1 year versus 1 year and 1 day, he will be required to serve the full 1 year. In addition, he'll be on 6 months electronic monitoring home arrest after, and 3 years.
Can you visit
him? We can visit him now, and we're very grateful that we have that opportunity. Yes, it's
Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's millionaire could become president of the United States and did send classified information. Your son is behind bars. His wife has lost her job because she has to take care of her child at home, doesn't have child care. So financially, it's a strain on your family.
It's a horrible strain, and I myself had lost my job because I was a federal employee, as I stated. You know, I've mentioned before when I was on here, and I'm going to say it again, I have a strong faith in God that God will take care of us. I continue to pray for that, and I recognize that as a federal employee, 2 months ago, I would not be able to come on the TV under the Hatch Act, which has been brought up for Comey.
It sure has.
To impact an election. So I'm grateful that God has allowed me to have this opportunity to speak out. And I mentioned before, it's not just about my son. This is about every American patriot, because what happened to us could happen to anyone.
Absolutely.
And
you clearly have faith in our country. You're wearing your red, white, and blue.
Right.
We wish you all the best. God bless you,
very much.
And please check out our Facebook page, American Patriots Against Double Standards.
It seems like an appropriate title.
Yes,
All right, Kathleen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathleen.
David Bossie is the Deputy Campaign Manager for Trump-Pence. He joins us live today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet, Kristen. Thank you very much. So what do you think?
Oh, I think this is an amazing time for Donald Trump taking his message to all Americans, and we're having a great time with our positive message of hope, growth, opportunity for all Americans. Donald Trump said it many, many times. He wants to be president of all Americans, and we're looking forward to Election Day.
I've been watching some of your live events. One thing's consistent. You start with Obamacare, and then you go to the emails. Why do you think that Obamacare resonates more? What are you seeing?
You know, the American people have always wanted to talk about the substance of the issues. And we have been saying, Mr. Trump's been saying for a year and a half that he wants to repeal and replace Obamacare, that's going to be his #1 signature issue, to get that off the backs of the American people and make American health care great again. And what we've seen is through our events across the country, Mr. Trump's been traveling extensively over the last several months. We've seen the American people just respond to that issue, and that's why we're talking about the issues. Obviously, the FBI issue is a big one, but the American people care about what's affecting them on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
Wow. All right. Chicago Tribune is not supporting Hillary Clinton through all of this, even though she conveniently says Chicago's her hometown. It's the hometown of President Barack Obama. This is what the columnist wrote. Think of a nation suffering a bad economy and continuing chaos in the Middle East, and now also facing a criminal investigation of a president. The best thing would be for Democrats to ask her to step down. It would be the most responsible thing to do if the nation were more important to them than power. And the American news media, fairly or not firmly identified in the public mind as Mrs. Clinton's Political Action Committee, should begin demanding it. What's your reaction?
Yeah, that's columnist John Cass.
Look, those are not friends of Mr. Trump's either, right? They're not. We look at the Chicago Trib and are shocked by that. Look, what they're saying is another 4 years of Clinton investigations. They lived through the 90s where one investigation after the other of the corruption that was the Clinton White House from 1993 to 2000. And they just don't want to see it again. And they're seeing issues like this with Jim Comey this past week that's raising that bar for them, and I think that they're bringing up an issue that the Democrats need to consider seriously.
You know, David, there have been 3 big October surprises in your favor. WikiLeaks, you had the Affordable Care Act, which you talked about with Brian just a moment ago, and now James Comey. That could explain how, in the very latest Washington Post ABC poll, Hillary Clinton's 12-point lead has evaporated in less than a week. Right now, they are neck and neck. Also, I was reading this morning, according to the New York Times, Donald Trump is up by 4 in Florida. Why is it that people who have been on the fence seem to be going your guys' way?
This is exciting. This is what we've always been hoping and planning for in this campaign. Mr. Trump's message to Republicans is really resonating, and to independents is really resonating. And that's who are coming home to Mr. Trump's candidacy, and that's why we're seeing this lift in the polls in the last few days.
I am surprised, personally, that you're in New Mexico and Michigan, not North Carolina and Pennsylvania. What's going on?
Well, we're in Pennsylvania and Florida as well. We're going to be in Florida tomorrow. We're in Pennsylvania later this week. We're in Pennsylvania tomorrow.
What are you seeing in Michigan?
But what we're seeing is polls tightening. We've had 3 polls here just in the last few days that show us within the margin of error in Michigan. We're excited to be able to bring our message there, and Mr. Trump's doing some great events there later today. We look at New Mexico, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and others as an opportunity for us to expand our map, to be on offense this last week. And Mrs. Clinton, while in between naps, is really trying to is being on the defensive and constricting. Look, she's having to protect her areas instead of expand.
She wants you to let go. She says, I want to see those emails, James Comey. Do you feel the same way?
Look. That's a defensive posture.
But do you want to see those emails too?
Brian, of course we want to see them, but she also knows she's able to say that because James Comey is not able to provide them. She's demanding something that is not possible under our current system.
Because then it makes it look like she's saying, I didn't do anything wrong, I want to see these emails, bring them out, let's make them public.
We all want to see transparency, when in fact, she and Huma Abedin know exactly what's in those
emails. And they could release them.
And the FBI already said they will not be releasing these. They will not complete this investigation before the election.
Of course not. This is going to take months, and that's why we as all Americans are concerned about electing somebody who is going to be in such have such criminal problems as president.
David, for the FBI director to come out on Friday and do what he did, what does that suggest to you is in this 650,000 email cache?
You know, it's interesting. I've worked in investigations, as you guys know, for a long time. This is very serious because no FBI director 12 days before the general election for President of the United States is going to take that action unless he or she has seen evidence that has requires this type of action.
Risen to the level.
It has to have breached the level in which his senior leadership at the FBI demanded action, and I think he relented to his senior leadership.
Do you believe there's something going on in the FBI that forced him to do that within the FBI?
Look, but this happens in every case. Because people come to you and say, we need to do this, and they make arguments. He was clearly convinced that there were possible crimes here by the candidate and her top aides. Look, let's not forget, 5 of her aides received immunity. These people have. This is an octopus. This investigation.
And no one is to blame but Hillary, right? Because you've got Harry Reid that's blaming James Comey. James Comey is investigating her email.
Sure. Absolutely. Harry Reid just look, I mean, Harry Reid's a political hack who's on his way out, so he has nothing to lose. He's not running for re-election, and quite honestly, thankfully. But these Democrats will do anything to try and muddy the waters, and we just need to let the FBI do their job.
All right. David Bossie, we thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
It's an exciting 8 days.
We should point out we did invite folks from the Hillary campaign, and they have declined to appear on the program.
All right. Over the summer, Attorney General Loretta Lynch recused herself from the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, but has she still been pulling strings behind the scenes all along? Former Attorney General under President George W. Bush, Alberto Gonzales, joins us right now. We were just talking to the break, Mr. Attorney General. Always great to see you. And we're saying we don't know what's going on between Justice and the FBI. And what do you mean that she might not have really recused herself from this investigation?
Well, if in fact there was a formal recusal and there was a process involved in formally recusing herself from an investigation, then she would not have been able to comment at all as to what Director Comey did last week. Once you recuse yourself, you're out completely.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that there's no direction for Maine Justice. At that point, the Deputy Attorney General steps in, and that's what's so peculiar about all of this is the absence of Maine Justice from this whole investigation, to me, is rather puzzling.
What about the tension, clearly, and the disagreement between Justice and the FBI about going forward? Is that highly unusual to you?
Well, occasionally from time to time there's going to be tension, of course, between the investigators and the prosecutors in terms of whether or not to go forward or not. Investigators may think there's enough evidence to go forward. The prosecutors may look at the evidence and decide, no, we disagree. It is our job to make that calculation. So sometimes there's going to be tension, but obviously what makes this unusual is the fact that we're just a week away from a presidential election involving one of the candidates, and that's what makes it so unusual. The other thing that makes it unusual, of course, is the way that that Jim Comey announced this summer that they would not move forward with any kind of criminal charges. So there's very little about this investigation that is consistent with protocol, quite frankly.
We understand, too, that Justice found out the New York field office was continuing to pursue this email investigation and how it's linked to the foundation. And the word is, according to this Wall Street Journal article, that Justice Department was extremely angry at the FBI for going forward with this after Comey made his little speech.
Well, that to me also is somewhat surprising in that you've got the U.S. attorneys who are the field generals for Maine Justice. Their job is to make sure that Maine Justice is aware of any kind of investigation that it could be considered high profile, which of course this would be. And so the fact that there may be surprise about that also is somewhat puzzling to me.
Senator Harry Reid comes out and says, I think Comey's in violation of the Hatch Act, and he might bring up some type of might bring some legal action against him. Is he in violation of anything that you know of?
I don't know whether or not this is the kind of action that would be in violation of the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act was intended to prevent, government officials from going out and politicking on behalf of a candidate, using government resources on behalf of a political candidate. I'm not sure that this really reaches a violation of the Hatch Act.
And, Mr. Attorney General, you're one of the rare people that really has an understanding on the inside and outside. As you look at this situation, what bothers you most?
Well, certainly there are many things that bother me most about the investigation. One is the absence of the Attorney General and the prosecutors in this case. It's as if they've stepped aside completely and allowed the playing field entirely to Jim Comey, who heads up the investigators, and that is not the appropriate role of Maine Justice. Their job is to take the evidence gathered by the investigators at the FBI and make a decision as to whether or not a crime has been committed.
When the next shoe drops, we'd like to call you. I hope you stay by your phone. Mr. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Hillary Clinton and her supporters blasting FBI Director James Comey's decision on Friday to talk about the email server case.
I'm sure that some of you may have heard about a letter that the FBI director sent out yesterday. It's pretty strange to put something like that out with such little information right before an election. It's unprecedented, and it is deeply troubling.
Well, joining us right now is former special counsel to President Bill Clinton, Lanny Davis. Lanny, good morning to you.
Morning, Steve.
So you loved Comey in the summer, but now you hate him, right?
Well, first of all, I don't hate him. 200 former prosecutors, including a former Republican Deputy Attorney General, even your previous guest, Attorney General Gonzales, have all said it's unprecedented what Mr. Comey has done in such a vague manner, especially without even saying that he knows anything that might be significant. So that's what is strange. But I also heard your new co-host declare Hillary Clinton guilty of lying and lots of other very intemperate words, while Mr. Comey determined that she was not, at least as of the last time, and still hasn't contradicted guilty of anything. Indeed, he said it wasn't even close.
Well, I think Mr. Comey in July said that she was careless, but he was not going to suggest any charges. But if, Lanny, you know, just the way it looks, he's the FBI director. He's America's #1 lawman. For him to say he's got something pertinent regarding the case, you just figure it must be big.
Well, Steve, you've used the word must be. That is an assumption. You're entitled to an assumption. But when you declare something as a fact, as I heard your co-host saying corrupt, lied, that is irresponsible. In fact, the FBI director, to complete your sentence, Steve, which was responsible, said he doesn't know whether there is anything significant. So if he knows nothing is significant yet, and he has nothing further to say, Mrs. Clinton has said, put it all out, publish all the emails, but let's not speculate on what is a fair and balanced program, Fox and Friends. All speculation, but you shouldn't be using words of corruption without evidence.
I think she was just expressing her opinion. I got a question, because we give you the facts and we give you our points of view as well. That's what people expect in the morning. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that they're going through 650,000 email. And apparently, according to the metadata, Lanny, there were a number of state.gov and Clinton Foundation emails in there as well. What were all of those things, all those emails, doing on the laptop that she shared with her husband, Anthony Weiner, which we now know about because the FBI was looking into his inappropriate relationship online with a teenager?
Again, Steve, you've used the number 650,000. That comes from news reports, not from Mr. So we don't know what the truth is. The Los Angeles Times reported that none of these emails were sent to or received by Hillary Clinton. We don't know whether that's true.
Well, I don't. There's a lot we don't know. Absolutely.
So therefore, speculating for your entire program what might or may be the case can be solved if Director Comey had not violated protocol that offended a former Republican Deputy Attorney General. And let's publish all these emails right now, as Secretary Clinton has asked. I don't believe 600,000 is a realistic number. There are probably a lot of duplicates.
Well, you don't know either. Lanny, you don't know either. No, I don't.
So let's publish them rather than in the last week. You know, if this were the shoe on the other foot, can you imagine the Republican Party with a Democratic-appointed director of the FBI putting out a statement so vague that he says he doesn't know whether anything he is saying is significant in the last week? There would be outrage among Republicans had that been done.
Well, you know, Lanny, as Ainsley had said earlier, and we've been talking about, Huma turned over all her devices and said, that's it. Nothing else on any other devices. That apparently not true.
Well, apparently she was unaware or forgot. We haven't heard yet exactly what is on that computer.
How do you forget if your work emails somehow just mysteriously appear on a laptop in your living room?
You know, to be fair, Director Comey knows the answers to these questions, yet he sent a vague letter where he says, I don't even know whether there's anything significant. Yet not only Fox, but all the news media have called this reopening an investigation where the director says, I don't know what's significant. So Huma Abedin isn't on the air today. She's under the advice of counsel. But it is entirely possible that she did not remember that her then husband, they're now separated, had these emails and that we don't know how they got there. So the final verdict here is out, and Director Comey has it within his power. You guys would certainly appreciate him speaking and clarifying what the word pertinent means. And he said significant. He needs to be at least more clear in the last week before an election.
Right. No, no doubt about it. There are a lot of blanks that need to be filled in, and it would be great if we knew that. One of the things, let me quote WikiLeaks for a second. I'm sure you're going to say it came from the Russians, but near
no, wait a minute. 17 intelligence agencies say it came from the Russians, not me.
Please, come on. Don't embarrass yourself. Neera Tanden.
Excuse me, 17 intelligence agencies. That's an embarrassment, Stephen.
Lanny, you're cracking me up here. Neera Tanden, you know her. She emailed John Podesta, and she said, do we know who told Hillary Clinton she could use a private email? Has that person been drawn and quartered? So do we know who told Hillary Clinton she could use a private email server?
Well, first of all, she has said that was a mistake, and she apologized.
Right.
I haven't heard
who gave her
Donald
the okay?
Trump apologize yet for saying that there's sexual assault and that's locker room talk. No apology to the cons in
Let's go back to my question. Who told her it was okay?
So I don't know who told her. I know she says it was a mistake. I haven't heard Donald Trump say anything was a mistake. And as to Neera Tanden, whether she wrote those words or not, let me repeat, it's not funny, Steve, and it's not a joke. 17 of our U.S. intelligence agencies
which we have
confirmed that these leaks came from the Russians and that Mr. Putin has interfered in our election process. Were it to the benefit of a Democrat, can you imagine what Republicans would be saying?
All right.
Much less you.
There you go. All right. Lanny Davis, who wanted to come on and speak his piece. Lanny, you got your word out, right?
Thank you for being fair, Steve. You always are.
All right.
Thank you.
We try to do that here on the show. Fair and balanced?
Some for his decision to reopen the Clinton email case. Nearly 100 former federal prosecutors and high-ranking Department of Justice officials have slammed Comey in a joint letter to Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Joining us right now is former Democratic presidential candidate and former Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich, also former Georgia Congressman and Trump supporter Jack Kingston. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. Congressman Kucinich, let me kick this off with you. Your reaction to that letter?
Well, you know, my concern is how close it is to the election. Look, with this email investigation, I don't think there was any doubt, notwithstanding what Mr. Comey had said months ago, that there was going to be a continuation of it. And I don't think that it's in the interest of the American people to have the FBI whispering in their ear as they're going in to vote, hey, there might be some criminal activity here. You know, it's possible, but Congress can deal with that after the fact.
So are you saying that you would have
somebody can win an election?
Are you saying you would have preferred Jim Comey to not do anything and then let the country find out after Hillary Clinton is the president?
I'm saying that when you have information and you don't even describe it, you just say, well, we may have something. Essentially, that's what they said. We don't know what's in there. Hey, wait a minute. This is like reading a Franz Kafka novel. You have to have it. If you have something, say what you have, then the people can make their decision. But the lack of specificity makes this ominous, and frankly, it could change the outcome of the election. There's no question about that.
Well, they needed a warrant to go through all the emails. Congressman Kingston, let me ask you about that. I mean, some people are saying he should have done his job 6 months ago, rather than taking us all the way up to the doorstep that she was so careless with her handling of security information, but not going over the line and saying, yeah, I am recommending charges. Did he fail in his job initially?
Well, you know, I think absolutely there's some question about it, and there has been question about this all along. Dennis and I served with Trey Gowdy and Jim Sensenbrenner. These are really serious people. They saw all kinds of red flags that why did the FBI ignore this, ignore that. You know, and then I want to point out also on this letter, where was this outrage when Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch on an airplane in a very public type meeting? That is totally unprecedented as well. But, you know, this has happened before. It also happened to our colleague Kirk Weldon in 2006.
Absolutely
high visibility.
Right.
And Dennis, you remember Ted Stevens, the same sort of thing. The FBI.
Absolutely. I remember what they did to Stevens. I remember what they did to Kurt Weldon. That's why I'm saying, hey, be careful here.
How about Casper Weinberger being indicted right before the 1992 election?
Yes.
And it's essentially sort of implicating then President Bush in the Iran-Contra affair, which Bill Clinton on the campaign trail used to his advantage. The indictment later dropped.
Yes, and you know, I think the other thing that we still have to get back to is Huma Abedin said she turned over all of her emails. Now we're finding it maybe as many as 650,000. You know, so much of this could have been avoided if Hillary Clinton did, in fact, do what she said she was going to do, which was cooperate and turn over all the emails. It's obvious that they did not, and now because of WikiLeaks or because of disgruntled FBI investigators within the Bureau, there's a lot of pressure on Comey and others. And we really don't know what WikiLeaks is going to disclose in the next few days. There may be more, maybe they won't. But I do think Comey was in a damned if you do and damned if you don't position.
Well, hey, this Tony, for you, Dennis. Dennis, look, our friend Curt Weldon went through a lot when he suffered the announcement of the FBI investigation. He ended up losing the election to Joe Sestak, as you know. Yes. And let's be clear on this. Curt was never charged. The innuendo itself was sufficient. But let me say this in defense of what I think Comey's doing here. I've heard rumors that there may be things like espionage. The word espionage was used in some of the folks I was talking to Friday. So, Dennis, don't you think that despite everything that's happened in the past, that if this is something where you have the E word included, wouldn't that rise to the level of Comey having to do something now?
Well, here's the problem. You're talking about doing something based on rumors. If there's something specific, let the American people know. But the fact that it's infiltrating the media with sources say, with the possibility there might be something, hey, wait a minute, we're electing a president. If you've got something, say it. On the other hand, if you're not sure, don't talk about it. I want to go back to the Curt Weldon case. Curt Weldon was a fine member of Congress.
Absolutely.
He was smeared by the FBI. It cost him the election. And you know what? I'm saying this isn't a partisan matter. We've got to be careful how the great power of the Justice Department is used on the eve of an election. It could turn an election.
Donald Trump is gaining serious momentum as he goes on an all-out attack on Hillary Clinton over the FBI's renewed probe of her emails. Well, Kelly Wright has more on that and what the Trump camp is focusing on, Kelly, in this final week. I think they were handed a Christmas present early. 8 days to go, Kelly.
You know, it is Halloween, Lauren. Good morning to you, by the way. And for Halloween, we look for trick or treat. Well, if you look at Hillary Clinton right now, it's more or less, in her opinion, a trick from Director James Comey, and for Donald Trump, it is a treat. After FBI Director James Comey dropped a bomb on Hillary Clinton's campaign, her Republican rival, Donald Trump, who once criticized the FBI, is now using information from the FBI to attack Clinton, and he's gaining in the polls. With 8 days until the election, Donald Trump now trails Hillary Clinton in the polls by single digits. The Trump campaign claims the FBI's bombshell seems to be causing more tightening in the race, showing some voters' reluctance to a candidate they can't trust. Trump is hammering away at Clinton's integrity.
Hillary has nobody but herself to blame for her mounting legal problems. Her criminal action was willful, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. She set up this illegal server knowing full well that her actions put our national security at risk.
Now, here's how it all happened. The FBI has now obtained a search warrant to start reviewing top Clinton aide Huma Abedin's shared laptop with her estranged husband, former Congressman Anthony Weiner, for allegedly sexting with a minor. And it's driving Trump, the narrative for Trump, that Clinton represents what's wrong with Washington and that his campaign is focusing on draining the swamp if he becomes president.
I will continue to address and expose the criminal corruption of Hillary Clinton and its threat to the survival of our democracy.
So, Lauren, Trump will be campaigning in Michigan today. His running mate, Mike Pence, will hold rallies in the all-important state of Florida, a must-win state for the Trump ticket, by the way. And Trump's wife, Melania, will appear on the campaign trail this week, delivering her first campaign speech in Pennsylvania. You can be sure that all three of them will be talking about this FBI bombshell that was dropped on Hillary Clinton over the weekend.
Yeah, and finally, we might see some accountability and consequences. Thank you so much, Kelly Wright.
Thanks.
Kelly. We want to bring in Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Your Honor, good to see you, Judge.
Good morning.
Your take.
Well, for reasons I'll explain, I've been very critical of Director Comey, but I do not agree with Senator Reid that this is a Hatch Act violation. The Hatch Act, H-A-T-C-H Act, is a federal statute that prohibits federal employees from engaging in overt political activity using their official jobs or telephones or offices or any federal government assets. If Director Comey has said, by the way, this is a reason not to vote for Hillary Clinton, that would be a violation of the Hatch Act. But I think it's a stretch on the part of what Harry Reid is saying. Having said that, and if I may, I'll remind you that for 15 months I have been arguing that Hillary Clinton should be indicted, and since July 5 I've been arguing should have been indicted for espionage, the failure to maintain state secrets. This is absolutely and profoundly not the way to do it. The letter that he sent on Friday basically says, we think we have some new evidence. We haven't even looked at the evidence yet, but for that reason we're announcing that we're reopening the investigation. Federal regulations, FBI and DOJ regulations, prohibit making announcements about people running for office within 60 days of election, unless it's to save a life or to prevent violence. What should the FBI have done? Proceed forward with all the evidence they have and go where the evidence takes them, but not make an announcement about it without any specifics until after election.
So you think then she would have been elected into office, perhaps, and then we come out later and hearing, oh, by the way, I said for all of those months that investigation was closed. However, 11 days before the election, I did find this, and so now I'm bringing it to you now, even though President Clinton did win.
He didn't find anything 11 days before the election. He hasn't even seen the emails yet. If he has, he broke the law because he can't look at them until he gets a search warrant. They got the search warrant last night. So the announcement was made on the basis of a suspicion, not on the basis of any evidence actually examined by him. Look, when these rules were written about don't use your office to try and influence the outcome of an election, the government that wrote the rules made a value judgment. It is better to let that criminal get elected than it is to use your office to interfere with the election. We'll deal with the problem of her election afterwards.
So, Judge, did Director Comey do this because there were more devices found? We know Huma Abedin said she turned over everything, and now, since it was brought to light to him that she didn't do that and that actually Anthony Weiner had access to this information, is that what drove him to do it?
Well, I don't know what drove him to do it, but there are a couple of theories, one of which is Huma Abedin lied to the FBI when she was interviewed by them, and the proof positive of that is the treasure trove of information in this laptop. If that's the case, then Huma Abedin is their target and not Hillary Clinton. Another theory is that Huma Abedin self-forwarded emails. She will say she did this from US.gov and from the Clinton server. She forwarded them through Yahoo. She will say she did this so she could copy them and read them, or copy them and store them.
She said it was easier to print.
Correct, because the State Department printers were not the best. If there's information in there that she didn't give the FBI, or that Mrs. Clinton didn't give to her lawyers to give to the FBI, then the FBI has potential serious charges against the two of them. But until the FBI examines this stuff, Jim Comey has no business and no right saying, we may have something on you, but we don't know what it is, even though it's 11 days before Election Day. That's preposterous. It's unethical.
His
it's a
legacy
violation
would have been shot if he came out with this after she was president.
You know what? There are times when you have to do the right thing, notwithstanding what happens to your legacy.
And you don't think this was the right thing?
But he didn't do the right thing.
No, this is absolutely the wrong thing for him to make the announcement, not to pursue the investigation, but to announce that he's pursuing it 11 days before Election Day.
I want to bring in Senior Communications Advisor to the Donald Trump presidential campaign. Jason Miller is with us. Jason, good to see you.
Maria,
thank you so much for joining us. So your thoughts on the FBI warrant and the concern over Comey's potential breach of protocol here. That's what the Dems are saying.
Well, I think you're seeing from the Democrats, they're setting their hair on fire this morning over the last couple of days, attacking Director Comey, which is a far cry from what we saw just back in July. But I think one of the important things to point out with the Democrats saying that the FBI needs to release all these emails, I mean, isn't that what the American public has been asking Hillary Clinton to do for years now? Where are the 33,000 emails? Are you going to release them and put those forward? But let's take an opinion and obviously the politicization out of this. Taking a step back, I mean, 650,000 emails on a laptop. how did they not find this before? How is this just now coming forward? And the Wall Street Journal report that I believe it was Devlin Barrett who first broke this yesterday, or at least that was the story that I read.
Right. Dagan keeps mentioning that op-ed today, that piece today.
Yeah, very in-depth, a lot of work by Mr. Barrett on that. But there were at least thousands of emails between Huma Abedin and folks in government and Secretary Clinton that were on there. And so, I mean, if there's ever a laptop that needed to be bleached or acid washed or whatever you want to do it, I mean, that would be the one. But I mean, this is really concerning stuff. I mean, this is an unprecedented amount of evidence, and I think this really shows why, with 11 days out, the FBI took this remarkable step.
I also think that Jim Comey's not a stupid guy. I mean, he knows where we are in the calendar and knows this is a huge deal. If there wasn't something in there that was blockbuster, I don't know that he would be doing that.
I think it's important to note, too, that the left and Harry Reid is saying he potentially committed crimes and this could have been illegal. Well, let's take a step back. What Hillary Clinton did was illegal with her private email server. She was negligent. She completely broke law. So I don't know how they keep pointing the finger at James Comey when they should be pointing it back at themselves, especially when Huma Abedin had said in a deposition that she had given all her devices back. So she did it to herself.
So she lied again.
They lied again. They're consistently doing it to themselves, and now they're painting a guy that they praised a couple months ago as the villain.
Well, and keep in mind also that we already have 5 people in this investigation who've taken the Fifth Amendment. Right. Now, obviously, by taking the Fifth, that doesn't say that you did something wrong. But when you have 5 people lined up that are all taking the Fifth, clearly something here stinks. I mean, this is bad news. And it goes back to the biggest point from this last week. Why does this matter? Not just from the confidential and classified and top secret information and potential secrets that were given up, not just, which I think there's a very strong chance we could find obstruction of justice issues, knowledge that this circuitous route of getting around the official setup so things can be FOIA'd, but all goes back to much of it goes back to that $66 million, the Clinton Inc. that was all set up, and why we had this whole server set up. So this foundation, all this together makes most folks at home just say, I'm disgusted with this. We just need to drain the swamp. We need something different.
But how do you convert this news into changing the vote in those critical swing states? In the critical swing states, you've had about 1/4 of people have already voted early. And in the state of Florida, for example, the Democrats are outvoting the Republicans. We just got new information from Adam Shapiro. It's 4.5 million Republicans to 4.8 million Democrats as it stands right now in terms of early voting. By mail, it's Republicans win, but again, as more in-person voting is picked up, the Democrats are now dominating. How do you take this and convert that into a change in the vote?
In California, it's 1/3 of people have voted, by the way.
And yes, and people are voting. And 2 things I'd say on that with regard to Florida specific and then kind of the overall message. You know, there have been 2 polls out in the last couple of days showing that Mr. Trump is leading by 4% in Florida. The New York Times Upshot poll, and there was another one a couple of days ago. But with Florida, one of the things to keep in mind are there's registration, but then there are actual votes that have been turned in. And what we saw through the first 5 days of early voting and absentee voting this past week, the first 5 days of returns coming in, was that the Republican response rate was 7% higher, and the Democrats were 10% lower. So what does that mean? That means that usually Republicans come out with a deficit in the pre-election voting and then win on Election Day with numbers coming in. We're already 100,000 votes ahead of the pace of where that delta was between Romney and Obama 4 years ago. So from our end, not only are we seeing the polls saying that Mr. Trump is ahead by 4%, but we have an extra 100,000 votes that we've improved on. And so to your point, you were talking about registration, but when you look at the actual early voting and absentees, we're 100,000 ahead, and that's a great place to, and even beyond Florida, we're 35,000 votes ahead of the pace from where the delta was 4 years ago in North Carolina.
I'll correct that. That 4.5, 4.8, that's the total registered voters, and you're right, Republicans are leading up slightly in terms of the votes cast, and it's because of the ballots.
Jason, I'm concerned.
I mean the mail-in.
I'm concerned.
The mail-in.
Yeah, mail-in.
I'm concerned about the national security aspects of this. So one of the things that was talked about before is why can't they just take a thumb drive? Why couldn't Huma come down here to Fox News, drop off a thumb drive and says, here's all the email, go to town? Would you guys call for that? And secondly, if they don't do that, what about a special prosecutor? Why don't they just call for someone, a third party, to come in?
Grand jury,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think these are all good ideas. And one of the things that everyone saw this weekend was the Clinton campaign conference call that they had with Mr. Podesta and Mr. Mook, and they were calling on the FBI to put everything forward. And you saw then yesterday on the Sunday shows, they were all asked, well, have you guys picked up the phone and
Exactly.
called Ms. Abedin and asked her to release all this information. I mean, certainly she should be able to. I don't know why not. And so, you know, I don't think this is so much as trying to put it back on the director. I think they very simply, when that plane, when the plane landed on Friday, I mean, couldn't they have just asked then what all was on it?
By the way, we are all expecting the Clinton campaign to come out and at some point try to change the conversation here, because that's what they've done
They have to.
Numerous times.
They have to try.
Do you know of anything out there that they may have on Donald Trump at this point that we should expect them to drop today or tomorrow?
Well, it is Halloween, so who knows what kind of craziness they might pull off. No, look, Mr. Trump is very excited. You know, he's in New Mexico, traditionally blue state yesterday. He's in Michigan with multiple events today. Tomorrow, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. These are blue states that Mr. Trump is putting into play, and that's where all the energy is in this campaign.
All right, Jason Miller, good to see you.
I thank you all.
Thank you so much.